What is up, everybody? Chris Flick here. Chris Flick Podcast episode number 122. This episode, we're talking about cults. That's right. You heard it here first. We're talking about cults. We're talking about religion. We're going to talk about what is the difference. We're going to talk about indoctrination. We might even talk about murder. We might talk about multiple wives, polygamy, all that nonsense. Yeah, weird stuff, right? So anyway, back in the day when I was a young man, I remember, early 2000s we'll say, the Nancy Grace, I think was her name. She had that crazy show where she never listened to anybody. She was the host. She's like a former lawyer. She never listened to her guests. She spoke over everybody. She was totally obnoxious. And she was covering that story of Warren Jeffs, the FLDS, Fundamental Latter-day Saints, whatever it is, out of Utah. Around that same time, I remember that Elizabeth Smart story broke where that young girl got taken from her home. She was held captive. Again, Utah family, right? I'm thinking to myself, Utah, what is going on out there, man? I might have to avoid that place for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And anyhow, that goes down. Then I pick up Jon Krakauer's book, Under the Banner of Heaven, which is a good book. You've got murder, all right? You've got Mormons. You've got religion. What else do you have in that book? You've got the fundamentalist part, right? These little splinter cell organizations that broke off from the Mormons. All now, the main reason that they broke off of this is because multiple wives. So the Mormons, I think, decided, hey, Utah could become a state. The only thing is that you have to follow, federal regulations, right? You can't marry a bunch of women. They say, okay, fine, we'll give that up. They give it up. These fundamentalist groups were like, no way, Jose, I don't like this idea. We're going to go start our own thing. Which is where we get a guy by the name of Jon Jeffs eventually comes into play. Jon Jeffs, a lot of wives, man. I'm thinking 60 plus. I'm thinking hundreds of kids. I'm thinking he was known, he deemed himself to be the prophet. And this prophet, I think you're going to see some characteristics here before we get going. I watched, Wild Wild Country. Hare Krishna, I listened to a great story on that. David Koresh, the Branch Davidians. You got Jim Jones. You've got other charismatic figures that believe themselves to be prophets, and they get their information from a higher power. And it is in your best interest to listen to me, the prophet. Okay, and sometimes I might say things you don't like. Okay, but guess what? It's for the Lord. If you want to make it to heaven. If you want to make it to anywhere, it's like this paradise, whatever it may be, Zion, heaven. You gotta follow my orders, right? So anyway, Jon Jeffs becomes a prophet. Prophet's not supposed to die, but guess what? He dies. And around this time when his health is declining, one of his sons, Warren Jeffs, decides that, it might be a good time to become the mouthpiece for my dad, be there for him, be that next in line. Because we're gonna need a new prophet here. And if it's not me, then who else? Who's it going to be? He takes a look around and he decides, I'm taking this thing. Guess what? Rulon's dead. Warren says, I understand. The prophet's not supposed to die, but he was reborn. And do you know where he was reborn? Right inside of me. I am the new prophet. He is within me. And because he's within me, guess what? I'm going to marry my moms, my stepmoms. I'm taking you as my wives. And I'm going to marry a bunch of other ladies. All right? Because I'm the prophet. And you need to do what I say. And as he's in there, man, he starts doing some stuff that becomes a little bit questionable. He starts taking underage brides. He starts separating families. He starts, kicking out teenage boys because they're, potential, pursuers of the women. And these women are occupied already by these elders in the community. He kicks out a bunch of boys. They were called the Lost Boys. He kicks them out on the streets. He kicks out rebellious women. He decides, I'm going to remove high-ranking men. Men that might be dissenters. Men that might, create some sort of divide. Some dissidence, so to speak. I'm getting rid of you too. And guess what? You're not going to say bye to your kids. You're not going to say bye to your wife. You're going to get the hell out of here. Do you know why? Because I'm a benevolent dictator and I'm taking charge right now. This is all the stuff that happened over the years, right? They're in Utah, Colorado City, Utah, I believe. Then they moved to El Dorado, Texas. They moved to Texas. They built a compound, all right? This compound they were calling Yearning for Zion. Warren Jeffs said, hey man, we don't need to wait for the end of days to reach Zion. They were firm believers in the end of days. He said, we don't need to wait for it. It's here on earth, man. We're building it. It's in El Dorado. Let's go. So he builds it. But he says, I get to choose who's coming with me. So these guys worked day and night to build this compound. They told the town that they were building a hunting ranch. Next thing you know, it's just building after building after building. I don't know how they were able to do it, but they did it, man. I don't know how the town let them do it. Maybe in Texas you can get away with some things, right? But, you know, I found a little, I feel like that David Koresh thing, that Branch Davidians thing, where, you know, the ATF rolled in there and a bunch of other organizations went in there and they really did some damage. And that was in Texas, right? Texas is not the place to go if you're a cult, my opinion, all right? But he finds some land, he goes down there. Now, just to kind of sum up the story, one of their members, a high-ranking man, got arrested for having an underage bride. Warren Jeffs felt some heat. He decides he wants to go to Texas, right? That's when they're starting to build this compound. You know, during this whole time, news gets leaked to the police. This guy was complicit in, you know, just rape, basically, of a minor. And he becomes a fugitive. He's kind of a ghost. He comes in and he comes out, right? All this time while he's a fugitive, he's still leading the church. He's still getting his sermons, his teachings, and all this stuff. The Lord tells me something, then he sends it to his brother, to his cousin, to somebody else in the church. They relay that message to the people, and it continues to go. While he's out, Mr. Pious, Warren Jeffs, he's visiting the strip clubs. He's going to the casinos. He went to Disney. Where else did he go? Mardi Gras. He's living it up. The people of the church, they're giving him $300,000 a week. All right? $300,000 a week. They were smuggling it to him. They were putting it in cans. They were trying to conceal it because they did not. One man got arrested. One of his brothers, I think, got arrested for aiding and abetting a fugitive. He got pulled over, had a bunch of cash, found out that's where the money was going to Warren Jeffs. That guy gets arrested. So now they had to get creative. Just like all great criminals do, right? They figure out a way to complete the task one way or another. They get tomato soup or tomato cans, like crushed tomato cans. They dump it, stash money in it, glue the top back on. See you later. There goes the money to Mr. Jeffs, right? So now he's down in Florida. He's on the run. Eventually gets found, right? They find him in Vegas. He gets arrested. He gets thrown in jail. All this time, Child Protective Services gets the call. They go to the compound, Yearning for Zion, YFZ Ranch. And, you know, they're like, we're going to get the kids out of there. Not an altercation. They get a little pushback, like, we don't want you to take him. Everybody's happy here. These are the women saying this. Can't you see? We're all happy. And this weird monotone voice, and you're just like, what in the world is going on here? So they don't want their kids to leave. The authorities have no idea how many kids are there. They think it might be a few dozen. Then the first 100 come out. Then the second 100. Then the third 100. Turns out to be 416 kids. Child Protective Services has to make a decision. The state has to make a decision. Foster care or back to the families. After 8 weeks, they send them back to the families. Child Protective Services got a lot of heat nationally because Warren Jeffs from prison decided to ramp up a campaign to get public opinion on their side. They put the moms crying. They showed videos of kids getting separated from their mom, getting pushed into vans. You know, these women, Oprah Winfrey went to the damn compound, okay? Oprah's down at the compound. They're on Larry King Live saying, I've never seen a child bride before. Lying through their teeth, you know, getting other mothers on their side. And the state of Texas just capitulated, and they sent them back, all right? Kids go back. But while the kids are gone, the authorities dig up a lot more information. And it was just a matter of time. People are calling them. People are giving them tips. People are telling them, there's something there, all right? And we could help you. We could help you unleash this thing. One of the former wives, who I feel like this woman is probably, you know, maybe in her 40s now, married Rulon Jeffs, Warren's father, back in the day when she was, I think, a teen. I think she might have been 18 or 19. But he was 80-something. Gross stuff, right? So this lady calls the authorities, and she's just like, hey, I know that they have their records. I was married to Rulon Jeffs. I know those records somewhere. You have that compound. You have their temple. There's probably a bank. There's probably a safe. There's probably a vault. There's probably something there that has anything that you need. And what they were able to unearth there totally was well beyond anything that they could imagine. They found evidence of his wives, Warren Jeff's wives, and other people's wives. They found evidence of the age of these individuals, pictures of him with underage girls, audio recordings of him raping girls with other women in the room, with his other wives in the room, right? So these women, his other wives, were in the room when he was raping an underage girl, right? This stuff is nuts. It's heavy stuff, right? So they got audio recordings, right, and all this stuff. While all this thing's going on, the paranoia machine was ramped up. There's video cameras everywhere because they didn't trust people, right? So they have, video, they have just access to a lot of stuff. And when you think about something like this, I brought up Elizabeth Smart earlier, right? She was caught, she was seen out in public with her captors. She didn't run. She didn't leave. You hear about other things like the Stockholm Syndrome, where people, they feel a certain connection to their captors through mental manipulation, emotional control, whatever it may be, right? And they feel that connection and they don't leave. They have every opportunity to get out, but they don't do it. These kids, these people in this church, in this religion, in this cult, whatever you want to call it, they were taught from a young age the teachings of Warren Jeffs. They have brothers, they have sisters, they have little sisters. They have their family inside that church. For them to leave is a huge thing. They don't want to leave their loved ones behind. Others tell them they're crazy. There's nothing wrong here. Some people literally don't even understand that what is going on is illegal. There was a woman who was she was 26. The first time she ever saw a police car outside of, their compound. Everything was done internal there, right? So she didn't even know that police and SWAT teams existed. There was no internet. There was no television. They burned books. They cut out certain pages in books that kind of conflicted with what they were teaching. They got rid of certain holidays. I'm trying to even think of what else. Just all kinds of that stuff. You really had no choice. You were just totally indoctrinated from the day you were born. Now, when it comes to something like this, you want to talk about things in the world where certain people have different starting lines. These people were never really given an opportunity to, a fair shot at life, to be quite honest. Their parents might have been indoctrinated, or maybe their parents were just criminals and they were complicit totally, right? So then these kids are born into it. They're given away to another man at a young age. And they're told to obey, right? I mean, what the heck's the name of this thing? Be sweet. Keep sweet, pray and obey. I mean, that's what they were told from the get-go, and it's kind of gross. The men work, the women become wives, they have many children. I mean, one of the girls had 6 kids by the time she was 24. I mean, do the math on that, right? She got impregnated. I mean, I guess it's possible to have... Actually, no. I don't know if it is possible. She was underage, right? I mean, there's no way around it. Guns were taken, tools were taken, holidays were banned, right? I already said some of this stuff. A religion... So now we got to look at it. When does a religion become a cult? A religion becomes a cult when it doesn't allow the testing of its premises. Anybody that spoke out, those 21 men, there was 21 men that spoke out. What did Jeffs do? Remove them all. Women that were rebellious, get rid of them. Those young boys, the lost boys, they might shake some women, get rid of them, all right? Remove everybody. If you can't, knowledge is the ultimate tool in these places. If you cannot question certain things, then you will not be able to acquire knowledge. You will only know what you know. You only know what you've been told. Philip Zimbardo, the Stanford Prison Experiment guy. You talk about their evils of power, right? He found this out in his experiment, and you see it played out with Warren Jeffs. Zimbardo found, that he gave college students 2 roles. One of them were prison guards. One of them were inmates. Within 10 hours, the prison guards assumed like this evil role. And they had people peeing and pooping in their cells. They had them wearing like brown paper bags over their head. They were just totally embarrassing them, and they just assumed that role of power and they ran with it. And they just kept rolling with it. That Zimbardo had to cut the experiment because he didn't want to see this thing go any further. Warren Jeffs was given the power, and he just kept steamrolling it. And the more paranoid he got, the worse he get, the more dangerous he became. There's a few things that Zimbardo said that defines a cult. Behavior control. Jeffs did it. Information control. He did that. thought control. Also did that. And emotional control. All four. Check all those boxes. This FLDS thing, it ain't a religion, brother. Now, as we move to, I lost my train of thought there for a second, sorry. When we look at Warren Jeffs, he's in prison right now. When you look at the FLDS, there's still thousands of members out there. People were happy he got arrested. They were happy, sad that they had to unearth that stuff, but they were happy that they were able to put this man in prison for the rest of his life. But he's still leading. People are still brainwashed. They were told their whole life he's their prophet. They're still serving him. They're going to visit him in jail. He's telling them his visions, his teachings, his whatever, and then they're relaying that to everybody else, right? This is still going on today. Still thousands of members. When your faith in anything becomes all-consuming, when you're defined by one certain thing, whether it's your religion or political ideology, whether it's a sport team, whatever it may be, right? If whatever you are doing totally consumes your life, with whatever you're believing doesn't allow you to test out the theories, to test out certain ideas, to ask questions, to try to seek truth, you're barking up the wrong tree. A lot of these factors that we see here, those four criteria: behavior control, information control, thought control, emotional control. We see this stuff every day to a lesser degree in the things that we consume, the things that we're told, the things that we're told not to read, the things that we're told to avoid. Never forget that knowledge is the ultimate weapon. You gain knowledge by asking questions. You gain knowledge by not accepting everything to be true. You gain knowledge by questioning everything. This FLDS example is a harsh one, but it's common. From the days of Martin Luther all the way to today, and probably well before Luther and well after the FLDS. This mental manipulation stuff, man, doesn't go anywhere. It's going to be there. It's on us to tread lightly. It's on us to avoid certain things. It's on us to not be all consumed by certain ideologies. Hope you guys liked this episode. Peace, everybody.